The red dust of Mars swirled against the dome of Research Station Alpha, creating eerie patterns in the pale sunlight. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window, her dark eyes fixed on the excavation site below. After 3 years of digging, they'd finally found something that defied explanation. The object lay half buried in the Martian soil, its metallic surface untarnished despite countless millennia of exposure. Its geometric pattern seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, and it emitted a faint energy signature that none of their instruments could properly classify. Dr. Chen, the voice of her assistant, James Rodriguez, crackled through the comm system. You need to see this. The patterns, they're changing. Sarah pressed her hand against the cold glass, watching as pinpoints of light began to dance across the artifact's surface. Record everything, she ordered, already moving toward the airlock. And get me a secure line to Earth Command. The discovery would change everything, but not in the way anyone expected. Within 48 hours, humanity received its first message from the stars. The Zarkax Federation had been watching, waiting for precisely this moment. Their massive ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, a fleet of crystalline structures that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Their message was simple: you have awakened. We come to welcome you. In the weeks that followed, Earth's government scrambled to respond to this new reality. The Zarkax presented themselves as benevolent guides, eager to help humanity join the galactic community. Their ambassador, a tall, ethereal being named Vexthor, spoke of trade agreements, cultural exchange, and technological advancement. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Look at this, she told her team, projecting a holographic analysis of the Martian artifact. The energy signature is completely different from Zarkax technology. And these symbols? They're warning markers, not welcome signs. Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's linguist, nodded slowly. I've been comparing the patterns to the Zarkax language database they provided. There's no correlation. This was left by someone else entirely. The truth began to emerge in fragments. Each piece of data they recovered from the artifact painted a darker picture. The Zarkax's questions became more pointed, their interest in Earth's geological history more intense. They were looking for something they believed humans possessed without knowing it. Late one night, as Sarah worked alone in the lab, the artifact's surface suddenly crystallized into perfect clarity. A message, encoded in mathematical principles so universal they transcended language, began to play. To those who find this warning, they are coming. The harvesters of worlds who consume the essence of living planets. They destroyed us, but we seeded your world with our last hope. In your species, we hid the key to their defeat. Trust not their words of peace. Prepare. Survive. Remember. The message ended with a cascade of technical data, specifications for weapons, shield designs, and something else. Something revolutionary. Sarah's hands trembled as she began the download. But before it could complete, alarms blared throughout the station. Above Mars, the Zarkax ships were moving into attack positions. They had been monitoring everything. Delete nothing, Sarah commanded, initiating emergency protocols. Upload everything to the quantum backup servers. Now! The first energy blast struck the dome as her team scrambled to preserve their discoveries. James worked frantically at the main console, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. 90 seconds to complete backup. Sarah watched the progress bar inch forward as more impacts shook the station. Through the observation window, she could see Zarkax landing craft descending through the thin Martian atmosphere. Their crystalline surfaces reflected the red landscape, making them look like falling shards of bloody glass. 30 seconds. Emergency force fields flickered as the station's power grid struggled to compensate for the damage. Warning lights bathed the lab in crimson pulses. Through it all, Sarah stood at her station, protecting the download with every emergency measure she could think of. Transfer complete, James announced just as the main power failed. Sarah activated her emergency beacon, broadcasting on all frequencies. Earth Command, this is Dr. Chen. The Zarkax are hostile. I repeat, the Zarkax are hostile. We've recovered critical data from the artifact. Implementing Protocol Omega. Authentication code, Chinalpha 79 Delta. She turned to her team as the sound of cutting tools began to echo through the station's corridors. Destroy everything. They can't be allowed to know how much we've learned. The next 10 minutes were a blur of calculated destruction. Physical samples were incinerated. Hard drives were wiped and then physically destroyed. The artifact itself, having served its purpose, was targeted with a concentrated plasma burst that reduced it to molecular ash. When the Zarkax finally breached the lab, they found only ruins and a small team of human scientists with defiant smiles. Where is it? Vexthor himself demanded, his crystalline form pulsing with barely contained rage. Where's the message? Sarah met his gaze steadily. What message? The ambassador's form shifted, becoming something far more threatening. You cannot hope to resist us. Your species is young, weak. Tell us what you learned, and we will make your deaths painless. Young doesn't mean weak, Sarah replied. And we're full of surprises. At that moment, across the solar system, Earth's military commanders were receiving her encrypted transmission. Humanity had never trusted the Zarkax completely. There were contingency plans. As Sarah and her team were taken prisoner, defense platforms around Earth hummed to life. Research facilities worldwide began implementing the specifications they'd received. The Zarkax thought they had caught humanity unprepared. They were wrong. As Sarah was led away in restraints, she glimpsed Mars' rusty surface through a damaged section of the dome. Somewhere in the quantum data stream racing toward Earth was the key to humanity's survival, and perhaps its greatest leap forward. The ancient civilization had hidden their legacy in human DNA itself, waiting for the moment when it would be needed most. The real war was about to begin, and humanity, despite everything, was ready to fight. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility known only as Deep Harbor, Dr. Marcus Webb stared at streams of data flowing across his screens. 3 weeks had passed since the Mars incident, and Earth's greatest minds were working around the clock to decipher the ancient message hidden in the quantum transmission. It's not just technical data, he muttered, removing his glasses to rub his tired eyes. It's a genetic key. Admiral Helena Santos stood behind him, her weathered face reflecting in the dark screen. Above them, 3 kilometers of ocean and the most advanced shielding systems ever created protected them from Zarkax detection. Explain it to me, Doctor. In terms I can use. Marcus pulled up a 3-dimensional model of human DNA. The ancient civilization, we're calling them the predecessors, didn't just leave us weapons designs. They modified our ancestors, encoded information directly into our genetic structure. Information that's been sleeping in our DNA for millions of years. And now it's waking up? Yes, triggered by exposure to specific energy frequencies. The Martian artifact was a key, designed to activate these dormant sequences. He typed a command, and the DNA model began to transform. This is why the Zarkax came. They detected the activation signal. On the other side of the facility, Dr. Chen's voice came through the intercom. Despite her ordeal on Mars, she had managed to escape during transport, carrying crucial information in her neural implants. Admiral, you need to see this. The defense system is responding. In a massive chamber that had once housed nuclear submarines, something extraordinary was taking shape. Pools of liquid metal shifted and flowed, forming structures that defied conventional engineering. Workers watched in awe as the material responded to thoughts and gestures from the research team. The predecessors left us more than warnings, Sarah explained as the Admiral entered. They left us their legacy. This technology, it's not just advanced. It's evolved. And it's designed to work specifically with human neural patterns. A young researcher demonstrated, holding his hand over a pool of the liquid metal. In response, it rose and formed into complex geometric shapes, creating components that somehow looked both organic and mechanical. Our minds are the control system, Sarah continued. The predecessors engineered us to be living keys, the only species capable of fully utilizing their technology. The Zarkax can copy it, study it, but they can never truly master it. Admiral Santos watched as more structures took shape. How long until we can implement a defense system? That's the problem, Marcus interjected, joining them. The Zarkaks know what we're capable of becoming. They won't wait. According to the long-range sensors, they're already mobilizing their main fleet. We estimate 2 weeks before they reach Earth. The Admiral's expression hardened. Then we have 2 weeks to master technology that's been dormant for millions of years. What do you need? Sarah stepped forward, her eyes reflecting the shimmer of the liquid metal. Every human mind we can connect to the system. The technology responds to collective consciousness. The more minds working in harmony, the more powerful it becomes. And the risks? Unknown, Marcus admitted. We're asking people to link their minds to alien technology we barely understand. But the alternative is extinction. The decision was made within hours. As the Zarkaks fleet approached, humanity prepared for its greatest transformation. Volunteer centers were established worldwide. The truth was revealed to the public. Earth needed its people to become something more than human. The response was overwhelming. Millions stepped forward, ready to link their minds to the ancient defense network. Training centers worked around the clock, teaching people to access abilities that had lain dormant in their genes for millennia. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of children in Mumbai discovered they could form complex neural networks naturally, their young minds adapting to the alien technology with remarkable speed. Soon, similar reports emerged from around the globe. But the Zarkaks had not been idle. Their advanced forces launched probing attacks, testing Earth's defenses and gathering intelligence. Each skirmish revealed more of their capabilities and their weaknesses. They're afraid, Sarah realized, studying battle footage. Look at their attack patterns. They're not trying to destroy us immediately. They're trying to stop our development. In orbit, the first pieces of the defense network were taking shape. Satellites transformed into neural relay stations, linking the minds of millions into a vast, coordinated consciousness. The liquid metal technology, now dubbed neurosteel, formed massive structures that pulsed with the combined mental energy of humanity. But time was running out. Long-range sensors detected the main Zarkaks fleet passing Jupiter's orbit. Their numbers were staggering, thousands of ships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash. In Deep Harbor, Sarah stood before a global council of military and civilian leaders. We're not ready, she admitted. The defense network is at 60% capacity. We need more time. Admiral Santos studied the tactical displays. Time isn't something we have, Doctor. But we might be able to buy some. She outlined a desperate plan. Using the completed portions of the defense network, Earth would launch a preemptive strike. Not to defeat the Zarkaks, that was impossible with their current capabilities, but to delay them. A fighting retreat, she explained. We draw them into engagements near the outer planets, using our partial mastery of the predecessor technology to keep them off balance. Every hour we delay them is another hour for our people to connect to the network, another hour for our children to unlock more of our potential. Sarah looked at the casualty projections and felt her heart sink. The plan would work, but the cost would be devastating. Those who volunteered for the delaying action would face nearly certain death. Yet when the call went out, the volunteers came forward. Pilots, soldiers, and civilians alike, ready to sacrifice everything to give Earth its chance. As the first wave of defenders prepared to depart, Sarah made a discovery that would change everything, a hidden sequence in the genetic code that suggested the predecessors had left humanity one final gift. But unlocking it would require a risk greater than any they had taken so far. The rings of Saturn glowed in the pale sunlight as Earth's first line of defense took position. Captain Maya Patel stood on the bridge of the Ines Prometheus, humanity's first neural integrated warship. The vessel's liquid metal hull pulsed with the combined consciousness of her crew, 300 minds working in perfect harmony. Neural synchronization at 98%, reported her XO, Lieutenant Chenwei. The fleet is ready. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the ship as an extension of her own body. Through the neural network, she could sense the other vessel commanders doing the same. 40 ships, each crewed by volunteers who had shown the strongest ability to interface with the predecessor technology. Multiple contacts detected, announced the tactical officer. Zarkak's advance fleet entering the engagement zone. The enemy ships emerged from superluminal travel, their crystalline forms refracting starlight into rainbow patterns. They outnumbered Earth's defenders 3-1, but numbers weren't everything. Maya opened the fleet-wide neural channel. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Engage according to Plan Delta. The battle began with a display of power that would have been impossible just weeks ago. The human fleet's liquid metal hulls rippled and transformed, sprouting weapons and defense systems that responded directly to their crew's thoughts. The Zarkax opened fire with energy weapons that could vaporize mountains. But the humans were ready. Their ships moved with impossible grace, the neural integration allowing for reactions faster than any conventional system could achieve. Defensive screens shifted and adapted in microseconds, analyzing and countering each Zarkax attack pattern. Back on Earth, in Deep Harbor, Saracen monitored the battle through the quantum entanglement network. "It's working," she breathed, watching as the first Zarkax ships fell to coordinated human attacks. The neural integration is exceeding all projections. Admiral Santos nodded grimly. But look at their flagship. They're adapting. The massive Zarkax command vessel was indeed changing its strategy. Its crystalline surface began emitting patterns of energy that seemed to interfere with the human neural networks. Several Earth ships suddenly struggled to maintain their forms, their liquid metal hulls wavering. "They're trying to disrupt our neural connections," Marcus observed. "We need to warn the fleet." But Maya had already noticed. Through the neural link, she directed her fleet to fall back, reorganizing into a new formation. "Pattern Omega," she commanded. "Initiate the resonance protocol." What happened next stunned both sides. The human ships began emitting a harmonic frequency that had been encoded in their DNA, a gift from the predecessors that they'd only recently discovered. The sound was inaudible in space, but its effects were visible to all. The crystalline structures of the Zarkax ships began to vibrate, developing stress patterns. "By all that's sacred," breathed a Zarkax commander over an open channel. "They've mastered the song of breaking." The battle shifted. The Zarkax fleet retreated in disarray, their superior numbers meaning nothing against this unexpected weapon. But victory had come at a cost. 5 human ships were lost, their crews sacrificing themselves to protect their companions. As the survivors regrouped, Maya received an urgent transmission from Earth. Sarah's face appeared on her neural display. "Captain, we need you to recover something from the debris field." The Zarkax flagship left behind a crystalline core. "Our analysis suggests it contains vital information." The recovery operation was dangerous. Even shattered, Zarkax technology was unpredictable. But as Maya directed her ship to carefully collect the core, she sensed something strange through the neural interface. The crystal wasn't completely dead. It held patterns, memories, and something else, a truth that would shake both humanity and their enemies. In Deep Harbor, Sarah and her team worked frantically to decode the crystalline data structure. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The Zarkax, Sarah announced to the emergency council meeting, aren't our real enemy. They're running from something worse. Something that's been consuming entire galaxies. The predecessors didn't just give us the means to fight the Zarkax, they gave us the tools to face what comes after. Admiral Santos leaned forward. "Explain." Sarah brought up a holographic display showing complex genetic sequences. "The predecessors didn't just modify our DNA to control their technology. They encoded the knowledge of multiple extinct civilizations into our genetic structure. We're not just their heirs, we're the repository of countless species' combined knowledge and experience." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting to protect a legacy of cosmic proportions. But time was running out. The main Zarkax fleet was still approaching, and, even with their recent victory, Earth's defenders were dangerously outnumbered. In orbit around Saturn, Maya felt a change coming through the neural network. The liquid metal of her ship seemed to resonate with new frequencies, responding to genetic sequences that were only now becoming active. Across the fleet, other commanders reported similar phenomena. They were evolving, becoming something more than human, but not less. The real question was, would they complete this transformation in time to save not just Earth, but perhaps the entire galaxy? Through the quantum link, Sarah's voice reached them all. We've found it. The final protocol. But activating it will change us forever. We need to decide, as a species, if we're ready to take that step. The choice they would make would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of all life in the galaxy. Jupiter's great red spot churned beneath the gathered fleet, its perpetual storm a fitting backdrop for the battle to come. Humanity had chosen this massive gas giant as their final line of defense, its powerful magnetic field and radiation belts providing tactical advantages their newly awakened abilities could exploit. Captain Maya Patel stood in the Prometheus's neural chamber, her consciousness expanded through the ship's living metal. Through the fleet-wide network, she sensed the presence of 500 vessels, each crewed by humans who had embraced their evolutionary leap. The defensive line they'd established used Jupiter's moons as anchor points for a massive energy web, a trap waiting to be sprung. Main Zarkak's fleet detected, announced the tactical network. 5,000 ships approaching at superluminal velocity. In deep harbor, Sarah Chun and her team monitored the situation through quantum entanglement feeds. The genetic protocol they discovered was spreading through Earth's population, awakening abilities that had lain dormant for millions of years. Children were being born with fully active neural interfaces, able to manipulate the predecessor technology instinctively. The transformation is accelerating, Marcus reported, studying the latest data. But we're still only at 70% of projected potential. We need more time. Admiral Santos's hologram flickered in the command center. Time isn't on our side, Doctor. The Zarkaks know what we're becoming. That's why they're committing their entire fleet. It's now or never. Sarah pressed her hands against the neural interface panel, feeling the collective consciousness of humanity flowing through the network. Maya, are you ready? In orbit around Jupiter, Maya opened her eyes. As ready as we'll ever be. The trap is set. The Zarkak's fleet emerged from superluminal travel in a dazzling display of crystalline ships, their formations spreading across millions of kilometers. At their center, a massive vessel pulsed with energy patterns never before seen. By the predecessors, Marcus breathed, analyzing the readings. That's not just a flagship. It's a stellar manipulator. They're planning to trigger a nova in our sun. The revelation sent shockwaves through the neural network. The Zarkaks weren't just trying to defeat humanity, they were willing to destroy the entire solar system to prevent what humanity was becoming. Maya's voice carried across all channels, initiate Protocol Ascendant. The battle began with a maneuver that would have been impossible just months ago. The human fleet, moving in perfect synchronization, activated the energy web. Jupiter's magnetic field amplified their power, creating a cascade of forces that disrupted the Zarkak's formation. Dozens of enemy ships were caught in the initial trap, their crystalline structures shattering under the strain. But the Zarkaks had not come unprepared. Their flagship released waves of energy that began to counter the human neural networks, trying to sever the connections that made their coordination possible. They're using our own genetic frequencies against us, Sarah realized, watching the battle unfold. The Zarkaks have been studying us since first contact. They've learned to disrupt the predecessor protocols. In space, human ships began to falter as their neural networks experienced interference. The liquid metal hulls of several vessels became unstable, losing cohesion. Maya felt the pressure in her own mind, a burning sensation that threatened to overwhelm her consciousness. But then something unexpected happened. Through the pain, through the interference, new connections began to form. The human neural network wasn't just resisting the Zarkak's attack, it was adapting, evolving in real time. The genetic protocols left by the predecessors were combining in ways their creators had never imagined. They're not just protocols, Sarah suddenly understood, watching the data streams. They're seeds. The predecessors didn't give us a finished weapon, they gave us the building blocks to create something entirely new. Maya felt it first, a surge of power that started in her neural implants and spread throughout her body. The liquid metal of her ship responded, not just transforming but evolving. Across the fleet, other commanders reported similar experiences. The Zarkak's attack faltered as they witnessed something unprecedented. The human ships were changing, their forms becoming more organic, more alive. The neural networks weren't just communication systems anymore. They had become a new form of consciousness, a bridge between organic and mechanical, between past and future. This is why they feared us, Maya broadcast to all channels, her voice carrying the weight of this new understanding. Not because of what the predecessors left us, but because of what we could become. The stellar manipulator on the Zarkak's flagship began to power up, its crystal lattices channeling enough energy to trigger a solar catastrophe. But they had waited too long. Maya gave the command, execute final protocol. The human fleet moved as one organism, their transformed ships creating a lattice of energy that mirrored the structure of human DNA itself. The song of breaking reached a crescendo, not just targeting the Zarkak's ships, but transforming them. Crystal lattices that had been weapons became conduits for something new. Through the chaos of battle, a signal reached Earth. It came from the Zarkak's flagship, but its signature was unlike anything they'd seen before. When they decoded it, the message was clear. We remember who we were. Before the fear, before the running. We remember why the predecessors chose humanity. The battle for soul had become something more, the first step toward healing a divide that had split the galaxy for millions of years. But as the fighting died down, as the transformed ships of both fleets hung in space around Jupiter, everyone knew this was just the beginning. The true test still waited out there, in the darkness between the galaxies. The force that had driven the Zarkaks to such desperate measures was still coming. But humanity was ready to face it. Not as the species they had been, but as something new. Something that carried within it the hopes and dreams of countless civilizations, preserved in their very DNA. The next phase of the war would not be fought with weapons, but with understanding. And humanity, for the first time in its history, was truly prepared to take its place among the stars. The transformed Zarkak's flagship hung in Earth orbit like a living crystal garden, its structure now an intricate blend of geometric patterns and organic forms. Inside its reconfigured halls, Dr. Saracen stood before a council unlike any in human history. Representatives of Earth's nations sat alongside former Zarkak's commanders, their neural interfaces allowing direct communication that transcended language. High Admiral Vectera, once the supreme commander of the Zarkak's fleet, projected his thoughts through the shared consciousness. We were so blind. For millennia, we thought we were running from destruction. Instead, we were running from evolution itself. Sarah nodded, understanding flowing through the neural link. The massive holographic display between them showed the true scale of what they faced. A void was spreading between galaxies, consuming not just matter and energy, but the fundamental forces that bound reality together. The predecessors knew this was coming, she explained, accessing genetic memories that were still unfolding in human DNA. They seeded thousands of worlds with different aspects of their knowledge, but Earth was special. They gave us not just their technology, but their capacity for change. In orbit around Jupiter, Maya Patel and her fleet continued to evolve. The ships were no longer simply vessels but living extensions of their crews. The liquid metal had become something new, a hybrid of organic and mechanical that responded to thought and emotion in ways that defied conventional physics. Through the quantum network, Maya shared her experience. Every day we discover new abilities. The genetic protocols aren't just awakening, they're combining with our own evolutionary potential. We're becoming something that's never existed before. But time was running out. Long-range sensors, enhanced by the combined technology of human and Zarkak science, detected the void's approach. It would reach the Andromeda Galaxy within a year, and the Milky Way shortly after. In Deep Harbor, Marcus Webb worked with a team of human and Zarkak scientists, analyzing data streaming in from transformed ships exploring the edge of the solar system. The void isn't just consuming space, he reported. It's consuming possibility itself. Every reality it touches becomes less, simpler, more entropic. Admiral Santos, her neural implants now fully integrated with the command network, studied the tactical projections. Can it be stopped? Sarah stepped forward, her consciousness expanding to share what she'd learned from the deepest layers of the predecessor protocols. The holographic display shifted, showing patterns of energy and matter that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. "The void is a natural process gone wrong," she explained. "The universe tries to reduce complexity, to smooth out differences. But intelligence, life itself, pushes back against that tendency. We create complexity, new possibilities, new ways of being." The predecessors discovered that consciousness itself could be used to reshape reality at its most fundamental level. "But they failed," Vectera observed. "They didn't fail," Sarah corrected. "They sacrificed themselves to create us." Human DNA was engineered to be quantum computational matrix, capable of modeling and influencing reality itself. The Zarkak's crystalline technology was designed to amplify and focus that ability. Apart, we were incomplete. Together. She let the thought hang in the air as understanding rippled through the neural network. The transformation of the fleet hadn't just been about survival or victory. It was preparation for something far more profound. Maya's voice joined the conversation from Jupiter. "We're not just fighting the void. We're going to rewrite the laws that allow it to exist." The next phase of preparation began immediately. Around Earth, massive structures began to grow, not built, but crystallized into existence by the combined will of humanity and their former enemies. These weren't weapons or shields, but something far more ambitious: reality engines. Children born during this period emerged with fully activated genetic protocols, their minds naturally attuned to both the quantum substrate of space-time and the crystalline technology that could manipulate it. They became known as the bridge generation, the first true hybrids of human and predecessor potential. In her private quarters, Sarah spent hours connecting with the deepest layers of genetic memory left by the predecessors. What she found there was both terrifying and inspiring. The void wasn't a natural phenomenon at all. It was the result of an experiment conducted by beings from an even earlier era of the universe. In trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality, they had created something that threatened to reduce all existence to its simplest possible state. The predecessors had fought it for millennia before realizing that it couldn't be destroyed by conventional means. The only way to stop it was to introduce a new factor into reality itself, a form of consciousness that could comprehend and manipulate the quantum framework of existence. That's when they found Earth, a planet where evolution had already created beings with remarkable potential for abstract thought and adaptation. The predecessors hadn't just modified humans, they had designed them to be the next step in cosmic evolution. As the void drew closer, humanity and the Zarkaks worked to unlock the full potential of their combined heritage. The reality engines took shape, their crystalline structures extending into dimensions that human minds were only beginning to comprehend. But the final piece of the puzzle remained elusive. The predecessors had left one last protocol, locked behind layers of genetic coding that would only activate under specific conditions. As Sarah delved deeper into this mystery, she began to understand why they had hidden it so carefully. The final protocol wasn't just dangerous, it would fundamentally change what it meant to be human. And once activated, there would be no going back. In orbit, Maya and her fleet continued their evolution, becoming living proof that such change wasn't just possible but necessary. The question wasn't whether to take the final step, but whether they could do it in time. The void's shadow was already visible in the most powerful telescopes, a darkness that consumed not just light, but the possibility of light itself. The edges of the Oort cloud shimmered with crystalline light as humanity's combined fleet took up their final positions. Reality engines, massive structures of living crystal and quantum-entangled consciousness, formed a vast lattice around the solar system. At their heart, Earth glowed with transformed human and Zarkak's energy signatures, a beacon of evolved intelligence in the darkness of space. Sarah Chun stood in the central chamber of the largest reality engine, her consciousness expanded through the neural network to encompass the entire defensive grid. Through it, she could sense every ship, every mind, every quantum fluctuation in the approaching void. "Final protocol is ready for activation," she announced, her voice carrying through both conventional channels and neural links. "But everyone needs to understand what this means. Once we begin, there's no turning back. We won't just be changing the universe, we'll be changing ourselves at the most fundamental level. Maya Patel's response came from her position near Pluto, where her fleet had evolved into beings that existed simultaneously as consciousness, energy, and matter. We stopped being purely human the moment we accepted our legacy. The only choice now is whether we complete the transformation or let reality itself unravel. The void was visible now, even to conventional sensors. It appeared as an absence, a region where the stars simply stopped existing. But through the enhanced perception granted by their evolution, humanity could see its true nature, a cascade failure in the quantum fabric of space-time, spreading like a cancer through the cosmos. Admiral Santos, her consciousness merged with Earth's defensive systems, shared tactical data through the network. The void will reach our outer sensors in 6 hours. We need to begin the final protocol before it disrupts our quantum coherence. In Deep Harbor, Marcus Webb worked with a team of hybrid human Zarkax scientists, making final adjustments to the genetic activation sequences. The predecessors designed this to be a one-way transformation, he reminded them. Once initiated, the change will ripple through all connected consciousness in the solar system. Everyone linked to the network will be affected. They'll have to choose, Sarah added. Stay linked and evolve, or disconnect and remain as they are. The choice was offered to every human and Zarkax in the solar system. The response was overwhelming. Despite the unknown nature of the transformation, less than 1% chose to disconnect. Humanity had come too far, seen too much, to turn back now. As the void approached, Sarah initiated the final protocol. The reality engines hummed to life, their crystalline structures resonating with frequencies that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. Through the neural network, she felt the change begin. It started subtly, a shift in how they perceived quantum states, an ability to see probability waves as solid as matter. Then it accelerated. Human consciousness, already expanded by technology and genetic engineering, began to operate on multiple levels simultaneously. They could see the quantum threads that bound reality together, and, more importantly, they could touch them. Maya's fleet was the first to complete the transformation. Their ships, already evolved beyond their original forms, became something entirely new, beings of pure quantum consciousness that could shape reality through thought alone. The crews didn't pilot their vessels anymore. They had become one with them, existing in a state that defied conventional description. The void struck their outer defenses like a wave of entropy, trying to reduce the complexity of space-time to its simplest state. But it met something it had never encountered before, consciousness that could operate on its own level, beings who could reach into the quantum foam of reality and reshape it through pure will. Sarah felt the power flow through the reality engines, amplified by millions of transformed minds working in perfect harmony. They weren't just fighting the void, they were rewriting the laws that allowed it to exist. Now, she commanded, and the final phase began. The reality engines pulsed with energy that transcended conventional physics. Every transformed human and Zarkax added their consciousness to the effort. They reached into the void itself, not to destroy it, but to transform it, just as they had transformed themselves. Through their enhanced perception, they could see what the void truly was, the universe's attempt to resolve a fundamental paradox in its own structure. The beings who had accidentally created it had tried to observe reality at its most fundamental level, not understanding that consciousness itself was an essential component of existence. The combined knowledge of humanity, the Zarkax, and the predecessors provided the answer. Instead of fighting entropy, they embraced it, but as a force of transformation rather than reduction. The void began to change, its consuming darkness transformed into a cascade of new possibilities. Maya's fleet, now existing as quantum consciousness given form through will alone, led the charge into the transformed void. Where there had been emptiness, new realities began to bloom, universes where the laws of physics themselves could be shaped by conscious intent. Through it all, Earth remained their anchor, the cradle of a species that had evolved to become custodians of reality itself. The Bridge Generation children, born into this new age, would never know the limitations of existing in a single quantum state or being bound by conventional physics. As the transformation completed, Sarah stood in the heart of the reality engine. Her consciousness expanded across dimensions that her former self couldn't have comprehended. Through the network, she shared what she could see: endless possibilities, new forms of existence, and the promise of adventures beyond anything humanity had dreamed. "We are no longer just human," she broadcast to all minds in the solar system. "We are no longer just Sarkacs. We have become what the predecessors hoped we could be, the next step in the evolution of consciousness itself. And our journey is just beginning." The void that had threatened to end all complexity had become a gateway to new forms of existence. The universe itself had evolved, guided by the combined will of beings who had chosen to transcend their original forms. And in the heart of it all, Earth continued to turn, a bright blue jewel in space, forever marked as the place where consciousness had learned to shape reality itself, where humanity had taken its first steps into an existence without boundaries. The legacy of the predecessors was complete, but the story of what humanity would become was just beginning. Across the transformed void, new possibilities beckoned, waiting to be explored by beings who had become more than anyone had imagined possible. The dawn of a new age had arrived, not just for humanity, but for consciousness itself.